Resident Evil series has been one hell of a goofy roller coaster. They set the bar, raised the standard, kind of fell off and become something different before almost softly rebooting themselves into probably the most impressive survival horror AAA games you can get right around now. Now, I've never been the hugest fan of the Resident Evil series as a whole. Like, I love all the new ones, but going back to the old ones, like, I've never really played a whole lot of the original three. I usually get like an hour or two into one or two before I kind of fall off of it, and I've never played 3. But Resident Evil 4 is something I did play when I was a teenager, and it is a game I like a lot. It's a game that I think is absolutely incredible. It was a cultural phenomenon when it came out. It came out when I was probably like in grade 5, so I was definitely too young to play it. I was still playing my goofy games like Zelda and Mario and Pikmin and stuff, and I was having friends tell me about Resident Evil 4. Oh, there's this part where you're in a maze and these rabid dogs come out with big ass teeth and you shoot them in the head and their back explodes and there's tentacles flying over you and they grab you and rip your head off and blood and guts everywhere. It sounded like a nightmare I would never touch with a 10-foot pole when I was a little kid. So though I didn't play it when it was brand new, even back then, I was aware of just how significant this game was. The advertisements, the magazine covers, everywhere you look, it seemed like I was seeing Leon S. Kennedy. And any conversation I had with friends, they were telling me about how cool Leon S. Kennedy was. So the first time I played the game for myself was actually on the Wii. I was a Wii kid, 12, 13, 14, I was all about the Wii. Then I got a PS3, and then 15, 16, 17, I still played it sometimes, and it was around that time I found this at the very bottom of a Zeller's bargain bin, back when Zeller's was a thing here in Canada. And I brought it home, I was really excited. Wow, what an awesome find. I think this was before the HD version came out on PS3, so this is how I'm gonna play this right now. And I popped it in, I booted it up, and it didn't take very long for me to realize why people loved this game so freaking much. I think I was big into the Silent Hill games at the time, so I loved just survival horror mechanics, saving ammo, popping off careful shots, and here was a game where it was all about like actually aiming those shots, trying to hit them in the head when it mattered, hitting them in the knee to knock them over, and then do another action bouncing off of that, whether it's a suplex or a kick. Just the bouncing between all of these different things, one moment to the next shot, to the next backing up, everything felt like a meaningful, deliberate, careful decision. And even though I was playing the Wii version, which is just headshot heaven with the pointer controls, it was still incredibly easy for me to see why this game was heralded so high as such a cultural phenomenon. It was incredibly fun, on top of the provocative visuals and explosive gore and freaky creatures and the setting. All of that stuff is one thing, that's what you hear from conversations, but when you're playing it and you're having that ballet of inputs, that's when it really makes sense to you. So even though Resident Evil isn't really my favorite horror series in the grand scheme of things, mostly just because I haven't really given a lot of these games the proper time of day yet, Resident Evil 4 is the game that made me fall in love with that over-the-shoulder, careful aiming, careful resource management kind of gameplay, which I would then see next in Dead Space on PS3. That was the next thing I played after that, and I was equally in love with that game as well. The Dead Space remake was pretty freaking good, though. It was a lot more safer, a lot more close to what Dead Space was, just a coat of paint. It was great. It's a great new way to play that game. The controls super well and stuff, but the RE4 remake, that's a whole different ball game. Just so many questions with how is this going to turn out. I remember all the conversations way back before we even really had a trailer, and it was just kind of that obvious air in the air. That obvious scent in the air that we're like, okay, we know they're gonna make a remake of this one because it just fits the patterns, especially with Resident Evil 8. I was playing through that and I just kept seeing stuff from Resident Evil 4. The systems, like inventory screen being very similar, and also like the shopkeeper and stuff, and the aesthetics, just all the castles and the villages and the little shacks and stuff, and I just kept thinking, did they make this game just so they could remake Resident Evil 4? I think they did, and lo and behold, I'm holding it in my hand right now. So with how close RE4 already is to what we would expect from a modern RE game in third person, it was kind of difficult to imagine, like, what is this going to look like? Is it going to be like way more one-to-one, way closer to it, just the exact same thing, same level design and story, just with updated graphics and controls? Or was it going to be more like RE2 Remake, where it felt like a completely different, brand new game just based off of the same scenario? But now we don't have to wonder any longer because it's out. I've played it. I beat the whole thing just last night. God, was it long. The original is pretty long too, and this one is just as long. But yeah, I just beat it, so I figured, hey, I wasn't really planning on doing a video about this, but people seem to like those unscripted rambles that I can kind of crap out in a few days, and I gotta pay rent right now, so hey, let's just talk about RE4 like I did Callisto. I didn't take any notes this time. I was just so engrossed in the game and having so much fun. I wasn't really thinking about, this could be better. Take a note there, take a note here. I was just full-on engrossed. So I don't have any notes this time. I'm going off of raw brain power, which, as many of you know, I don't have much of, but that's okay. We're gonna make do anyway. Where to even begin with this thing? There's a lot to it, and there's a lot to talk about, but I guess I'll start by answering that question of wonder. Is it like a direct one-to-one recreation like the RE1 remake, or is it like a whole new game? I would argue it's almost in the middle. The gameplay, the game you are playing, the buttons you're pressing, the sticks you're moving, that is a totally new game, but the level design is a lot closer to the original than the RE2 remake was. Though they do deviate here and there are a lot of subtle changes that you will notice throughout it all. If you played the RE2 remake, then you kind of know what to expect from the gameplay. It's the same kind of over-the-shoulder shooting and saving on resources, careful headshots, knee shots knock them over, but now, in this game, just like the original, you get those moments where you can run up to a guy and kick him, or run up to a guy and suplex him to do extra damage, and you can also time that right, like get a guy in the middle of 3, get that prompt, run up, and then you can kick all 3 of them. So with the new smooth controls where you can aim and shoot and move all at the same time and reload and swap weapons without pausing the game, and all of these nice improvements to make it feel like a new experience. New modern experience, modernized experience. That came a big worry. I was wondering, so the original game was kind of designed around that stiff movement. It was designed around this idea that you have to stop aiming to take 2 steps back. That was its own decision. And a lot of people may play that sort of thing and just go, oh, this is kind of old and clunky and harder to interact with. But I would argue that that creates a higher, deliberate decision-making sort of gameplay. I like to imagine that engagement can be measured in decisions made per minute. And in a game where you have to let go of your gun and take 2 steps backward, that is the only thing you're doing in that moment. You stop this to do that. That's so you can dodge an axe. That is more decisions made in that second than if you're just shooting and took a step back at the same time. So I was kind of worried that, oh, is this going to be OP? I'm sure they're probably going to design the enemy AI taking into account the new things you can do, but there is that worry that the gameplay conversation wouldn't be as exhilarating because of that. But you can put those worries to rest right now, because while the gameplay is modernized and smoother and definitely easier to jump into if you're only used to newer games and you don't really respond too well to stiffer controls of older PlayStation 2 and GameCube games and stuff from around that era, they still managed to make it every bit as intense, every bit as deliberate and careful with that moment-to-moment decision-making, and it ends up being just as engaging as the original. So if you're no longer making those decisions about micro-movements, you need more actions to consider in any given moment, and they have more mechanics in this game that make a lot of sense for a modernized version of RE4 that also contribute to that decision-making. And one of the first big additions here, carrying on over from the RE2 remake and then also expanding on how it works, is the knife durability. Now, I don't want to hear any of you running down to the comments being like, knife durability is bad because I don't want to run out of my knife. I want my knife to last forever. Well, game design isn't about what you want. Game design isn't about what makes you comfortable. Game design is what makes you make more decisions. So on top of just knifing guys in order to save bullets, you can also do a couple of new things with a knife. Firstly, there's stealth, and it's really weird seeing stealth come into RE4 after The Evil Within was kind of like the next answer to RE4, and that had a lot of focus on stealth, and now we've gone full circle. We got crouch stealth in Resident Evil 4, and it's the exact same sort of thing where you sneak up on a guy and then you jam the knife into the back of him. But the big difference here is that you can't just do that as many times as you want. There is something you sacrifice with each time you do a stealth kill, and that is, again, your knife durability. You can't just, cheese it and figure out a path to stab every guy, because after doing that to maybe 5 guys, your knife's broken. Your knife's broken, and you don't want your knife to be broken. You know why? Because now you can't parry. And parrying is another thing I saw that I was like, oh no, is this going to be OP? Can I just parry every single thing? So basically parrying is while before the decision to dodge an axe coming your way or dodging someone swinging a blade at you, you would have to respond by putting your gun down and taking some steps, maybe curving or like quick turnaround with back and circle and then sprinting backwards. Now you have another option that kind of replaces that decision, and the decision you can make now is to press L1 quickly to parry it. So basically, Leon holds his knife up and blocks it. You can even do it with the chainsaw, and I was seeing this being like, so is that it? Is it just an action thing like RE3 tried to be? Oh, just do the action right every time and now you don't have to really worry about the resource stuff. No, because that is still expending a resource. Every parry uses up your knife's health. You don't want to parry every single time. And there's also counters you can do. If a guy grabs you, you can press R2 to stab your knife into him, sacrifice like a third of the knife's health, but you don't take nearly as much damage. But there's a lot of times where it's like, I kind of don't want to break my knife. I kind of need it for maybe a future decision that's more important. So I will mash X instead and let him take out some of my health so I can keep that knife because I need that knife. This is moment-to-moment decision-making that the original had, that they found new ways to create that sensation, to create those decisions, to create that engagement here. Oh, and one thing I should probably make clear is that while you do expend your knives, you also find them all over the place, just like you do with ammo. Even just stabbing stuff uses up your knife durability, so when you see a crate and you normally just slash that thing, I really had to get out of that mindset because Resident Evil 7, that's just how you open every crate, and that's probably definitely my single most played Resident Evil game. But now you go up to it and you just get an X prompt. I think Resident Evil 8 did the same thing just to save you from swapping to the knife, but now it is a deliberate thing. It's like, hey, if you're just playing with your old muscle memory, playing the game you used to, hey, just L1 pull out the knife. You don't have to equip it. It's just there, like the bow and arrow in new Zelda games, right? It's just there. You can just do it, muscle memory, but oh no, if I'm doing it that way like I used to, this is a beginner's trap for familiar fans. I'm wasting my knife's health, so you realize that and then you quickly stop doing it after like the first 10 minutes of the game. Nice little thing they had there to also trip up fans of the original, and I love it when a remake can do that. You're not going to be using the stealth nearly as much as you do in Evil Within, mostly because of the knife durability, but also because the levels aren't really designed for you to be able just to stealth the whole thing. Usually you're going to get 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 guys, and then the whole village is after you. You're only gonna get a couple of them, and then it just becomes a classic survival horror Resident Evil 4 kind of running around, popping off shots, trying to make sure you don't get killed while holding them all back, running upstairs and firing off the headshots. Dude, the gunplay in this remake feels amazing. I swear to God, Capcom has finally found like the secret algorithm, the secret perfect programming of just that recoil. When I got like 4 guys coming up the steps and it's like, man, I could use my shotgun, but I have 2 shells and there's probably gonna be a time more important than this to use it, so I'm gonna just use my handgun, which I have way more bullets of, and just that ballet of headshot, chest shot, and that guy's coming up, shoot him in the knee, boom, boom, and you're just popping between each and every guy. It's like, the way I can't even describe it. It's one of those game feel things. You just kind of got to play it yourself and you realize how much fun you're having. I always say if you can nail the one thing you're doing the most, like Mario 64, jumping, if you can nail that, the whole game's going to be fun. Outer Wilds, if you nail flying the ship and the jetpacks when you do the whole game, you got an amazing game. If you got a grapple hook mechanic, make that thing feel amazing, because if you're doing that the whole game, you got to have what you're always doing feel amazing. And they did that. Just aiming at a guy, firing, and then adjusting with the recoil. I can't describe it, but it is some of the most fun gunplay I've ever played in a survival horror game. I can't even get over it, how freaking fun this thing is. Just shooting is that fun. They also introduced a handful of new enemy types. I really love how they have this in-between enemy of just the standard zombie guy, for lack of a better word. Just the guys walking around being like, "Run, Donatello!" They still say, "Run, Donatello!" I think it's in Latin or something. I always thought they were saying "run from Othello," like the board game. I don't know, they were terrified of checkers or something. That's what I always, like, my dumb cartoon brain made up they're saying. They still say those same things. But there's versions of those enemies where sometimes you knock them down and they start freaking out. And then you have a moment, okay, I'm gonna finish them off with my knife, which uses up your knife's health meter, so maybe not. Maybe use a pistol bullet instead. But you gotta finish that guy off, or he's gonna get up, his neck's all messed up, and now he's just unstoppable. Bullets aren't doing nothing to me. I mean, it's draining his health, but it's not, there's no stopping power anymore unless you have a shotgun. So having this more aggressive enemy that doesn't have the big tentacle thing, kind of like this in-between of just the standard enemy and then the one where their heads blow up and the tentacles come out. Really cool having another version of that that's introduced a lot earlier that, again, contributes to the different decisions you're going to make in any given moment. I love that every single resource you have, it feels like you want to hold on to it until the perfect moment. If you have a grenade or two, it's like, man, when is the moment when there's really a lot of guys together, maybe strong guys, that I'm really going to use this? And you see those moments, you see those opportunities, and you always think, is there going to be a better one later? Should I just not use this? Or maybe you screw it, and then you do, and then later it's like, I wish I had a grenade. This game still does that better than anything. Like, Resident Evil 4 did that better than anything when it came out, and Resident Evil 4 is doing that better than anything when it's coming out again. The inventory is exactly the same. It's that classic attaché case, I don't know how to say that. I say shit wrong in videos all the time. Callisto Prodigal, correct me in the comments please and give my videos engagement, lol. What was I saying? The attaché case is the same. I'm always opening that thing. I'm rearranging stuff real quick. I kind of hate that it has an auto sort button. I remember, like, when Deus Ex Human Revolution had the same kind of inventory as RE4. It's like, awesome, I get to rearrange it, but then you just open stuff and automatically just puts everything anywhere. It doesn't matter. You never have to look at it. Here, there is an auto sort button, but hey, you can just choose not to use it. That's what I did. Every time you pick up an item and it's like, you don't have enough room, and you're just rearranging stuff. I love that so much. I really love the inventory in, like, Resident Evil 7. I love how quickly I can zip through it and just put everything where I want it to and just combine the herbs, and it's just as snappy here, and it's just as true to what it always was in the original, and I'm so glad because I don't know, there's just something immensely satisfying about keeping your inventory clean and easy to go through, easy to grab an item out of real quick. It's as good as ever. It's the same thing and it's fantastic. I don't think the gunpowder and resource crafting system was in the original. It's pretty much very similar to how 8 does it, Resident Evil Village. Sometimes you'll pick up gunpowder and sometimes you'll pick up resources, S or resources, L. Pretty self-explanatory. You're basically getting, like, the ingredients for bullets and then you just pick which bullets you want. And I always like when they have this level of, like, very simple crafting where it's just combine two things and get bullets, because then it's just kind of like you have more freedom in the decision making. If I really need bullets and my sniper rifle and my shotgun both have 0 and I get to pick which one of those I want, but it means I won't get the other for a while because I have to use this much gunpowder and then that S resource is going to be in my inventory for a while. Again, it feels like I'm making meaningful decisions. That's also really me customizing how I want to respond to the game. If I want sniper rifle ammo, even if they're not far away, and I just think I'm a little better with that thing and I can keep my distance because the room is like this size, then I'll choose sniper rifle bullets. So I really love the simple crafting, what that brings to the table. Evil Within 2 did that really well too. Pretty much same thing going on here. Kitty cat break. Hello, hello. A lot of the stuff is exactly the same, actually. The shop guy, the merchant, he's the same as ever.
Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger.
You can buy stuff, you can upgrade your guns, all that jazz, sell stuff by, you know, combining the gems and the treasures to make more valuable treasures. So you're always looking for stuff and looking for stuff to put in the treasures to make them even more valuable. Still does all that. The voice actor for the guy, I think, is a different voice actor. He doesn't really sound exactly the same, but I thought he did the voice pretty well. There's probably going to be, like, purists out there that are like, yeah, they changed the voice of this guy. Everyone has a different voice now, though, so it's like, I was almost thinking they were going to go for a different direction with this guy, but I'm really glad that, like, they completely kept the absolutely authentic, campy, goofy tone with all of these characters. So he's still just like, "Oh yeah, smell the stench of battle on you, stranger. Hey, there's a reason gun rhymes with fun. Take a look." And he's just fantastic as always. That's something I was really wondering how it was going to be, the tone of this thing, because Resident Evil is a rather goofy series. It was the OG of scary games, and you look back at the original and it's kind of like, people found this shit scary back then? You know what I mean? So it has that cultural weight, while it also kind of feels like a B-movie kind of camp fest. And Resident Evil 4, the original, was a cherry on the cake, because everything coming out of Leon was like a one-liner. It was like a Roddy Piper character from the 80s. So the tone here I was very curious about, because the RE2 remake, they kind of felt like they hit a balance between, yeah, it kind of feels like it's self-aware a little bit and still delivering the camp, but it did take itself very seriously. RE4 is that same kind of tone, but with the goofiness pushed a lot further, just like the original. So they're still taking everything seriously. Leon is still just...
You think I'm gonna give up that easy?
Straight delivery, just, that pissed off here. He says everything like he's taking it seriously, but what he's saying is still just as goofy. He's going to throw a grenade and go, sorry. He's still jumping on chandeliers and flying off of them. He's still doing all this goofy shit, backflipping out of windows and saying all these one-liners.
I am flattered, but I'm a one-lady type of guy.
Leon is still as authentically Leon as he possibly could be.
Guess your tap dancing days are over.
But at the same time, there's this weirdly very relatable human element to him now, where it's still delivery. The delivery is perfect because he's just as cool and edgy and badass in such a cartoonish fashion as he always was. Yet it almost feels like there's this hint of self-awareness in the voice. Like he almost feels like he's trying to be cool, but he's authentically pissed off and he's authentically hard-boiled from his military training and raccoon experience. That feels authentic. But it also feels like he's trying to be kind of cool, like he's trying to have a bit of fun with it. And when you see like Ashley actually being impressed with it, it just becomes the most adorable thing. I'm gonna be honest, I actually never really liked Ashley in the original. I found her voice just really irritating, and she kind of felt like a nothing character. I mean, I heard the story for Resident Evil 4 was written in like a week, so it's like this infamously nonsensical story, which does explain a lot. I don't know if that's true, but it would explain a lot. It also goes to show how much the team focused on just gameplay and making it fun first, so that's also why it's such a fun game. But that aside, never liked Ashley as a character, thought she was kind of a nothing character, and when she would scream out, "Leon!" it was this shrill, like higher register, annoying Cindy Vortex voice. I'm sure not everybody's going to like the changes to Ashley, because when you change anything, people get mad. But I love the changes to her character. She just, again, seems like a way more authentic human being. She has thoughts and feelings about what's going on, and the way her relationship with Leon kind of changes throughout the story, where Leon's just here to do a job at first, but then they kind of warm up to each other, but through that goofy, cartoonish action man language of Leon doing cartoonishly cool things and Ashley being kind of like weirded out or impressed by them, and then they warm up to each other throughout the game, and you feel it. They're a lot more friendly to each other, and they end up kind of caring about each other a little bit more.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And it becomes this like magical thing where everything this guy is doing is genuinely impressive and amazing, but he's like pairing it with these silly cartoonish one-liners. There's a part when you kill the knights and he goes, "Nighty-night, knights." Still says that, and Ashley is just swooned by it, and it's hilarious. But again, with how like human and just nice and down to earth and just genuinely adorable the interactions then become, it's this perfect tone, this perfect blend of, yeah, keeping the one-liners, keeping how badass Leon is, but dialing it in that human direction a little bit, where it just becomes like enjoyable in the same way, but also in this new way where you're just like, aw, that's kind of cute.
Is this what they teach kids in school these days?
Have you never heard of driver's ed?
Louise's character has probably seen the most changes. He is totally different. Well, it's kind of like on paper kind of a modified version of the same thing, but the delivery and the way he feels is totally different. Where in the original, Luis felt like this actual suave, cool guy. Now he kind of feels like a creepy weirdo who's trying to be a suave, cool guy, and I kind of like that more. Again, there's this air of comedy to it, and I like that change a lot too, because the whole point of Luis was that you don't know if you can trust him or not. And when this like suave pretty boy comes up and he just knows the cool thing to say every time and he doesn't really feel like a sketchy character, it kind of feels like the plot's telling me to be suspicious of him instead of me just actually feeling suspicious. I feel like they hit that a lot better. You don't really know whether you can trust him because he's kind of saying one thing, you kind of find out he's doing another thing, but then what he does for you doesn't really line up with that. So I feel like the way his character comes across, it feels that way a lot more consistently, and I really like that change. He also has a lot more screen time. They develop him a lot more, and spoilers. Let's just do a little spoiler talk right now. Skip here, no spoilers. If you know what happens because you play the original, it's the same thing. But when Luis dies, it is so much more impactful. You know, it doesn't have him falling down and saying a one-liner and Leon goes, "No!" Instead, he doesn't die in the castle. He comes with you in the mines, and you do this goofy minecart chase with him, and after that minecart chase, after playing a fucking Donkey Kong level with this guy, I liked him a lot more. Just seeing him and Leon interact more, kind of figuring out what he really is about, especially with the unveil at the end when I don't know if this was in the original, because again, I've only beaten the original once, but the end when you find that picture of him, and he was a doctor for Umbrella, he was a scientist, and he was just hired, he was just doing his job, he was just hired by the company, and he didn't really know what he was doing was harmful, and then he finds that out, and he kind of takes this more seriously, really wants to help people that are affected, and you're not just told that, and he doesn't even tell you that. He doesn't even make that clear to you. It's just you piece that together between what he's saying. Oh, you know, it just makes me feel better. It just makes me feel better. Leon's like, really? That's your reason? But then you see that picture at the end, and it just makes so much sense. Luis's character, when it comes full circle and you experience the whole game, hits you like a brick. I really love the changes to his character. Oh my god, when he's like, you know, I always had a shitty life, and he's trying to light his last cigarette, and Leon, who, this is a cool characterization. In the very beginning, you know Leon doesn't smoke. So when he is kind of sacrificing that part of himself to have a meaningful interaction with this guy in his last moment, that's the moment where you're like, Leon thinks differently of this guy now. What this guy is to Leon just changed. They did such a good job with Luis's character. I don't think everybody will agree. Again, it is really different, and when they change things, especially this much, people kind of, you know, tend to react badly to it. But I hope people will have that experience and just feel it and be like, okay, I like that, because I did. It was really good. It's really great. The part where you play as Ashley, I think, is the most pointless thing ever. I don't like when Resident Evil is like, hey, the whole game? Forget that for a second. None of your inventory matters right now. Here's a part where you just kind of hold forward and run, and since you can't defend yourself, you know that there's just a clear path past these guys. Like when they make you play as Sherry, and you're hiding from the scary police guy, it's like the stupidest shit. I hate it so much. I see the book, the way the hallway goes only one way. It's like, it's the most predictable shit. It's like, I know I'm gonna have to hide behind here. He's gonna go there. He's gonna come back. I go around and just wait the whole time, and then it's over. And it's like, when I see the mechanisms of something like that, I find it very difficult to get invested in the going-ons of the scene, what's happening, a little girl and this police chief guy who's some selfish bastard trying to hurt you, and he's bigger and you're small, and it's like, you're defenseless. I don't buy that, because I look at the mechanisms of the game, and the mechanisms of the game say, hey, walk around this in a circle and wait, and you're good, and you can just do it first try every time, because what to do is obvious. Ashley's part, it just felt more like that. You can run past the knights. Sure, there's like a game mechanic to it where you can like use a lantern to like freeze them, and that was like kind of fun, but I don't know. I didn't dislike it as much as I just could tell, oh, this is going to be that part of the game that you replay, and it's like, oh yeah, just time to do this part and then get back to the actual game. So wasn't huge on that. Like, again, it's not a bad part of the game, but I would absolutely prefer it if you could either skip it on replays, which maybe you can, I don't know if you can, but I would prefer if you just didn't do that part, you know what I mean? The escort mechanics have also been reworked quite a bit. Let's be honest, I think Resident Evil 4 is the only game where the escort mission ever really worked well. And it's because they have all of these little things there to make sure that it's smooth going and you don't have to worry about a dumb AI getting herself killed. Ashley's always at your back unless you tell her to stay behind, and if you aim and she's in the way, she's gonna duck. She's gonna get out of your way. Like, it's never really a problem. All it becomes is another excuse to do what you're already doing. Those careful, precise shots making every bullet count. And when someone gets picked up by somebody over their shoulder, they also pick a good spot for her to be, so there's like a lot of body to shoot at without really trying not to hit Ashley. You kind of can aim for the legs, but it becomes another reason to do that same kind of thing. You gotta figure out how to get more out of the gameplay without being annoying. But anyway, yeah, they handle that quite well here. It is a little bit different. You kind of have two like looser options where it's like stay close to me and then stay a little further back. You don't tell her just straight up to stay behind. She'll still follow you, just looser. So I felt like bouncing between those two was really great. If there's a bunch of guys coming up, I'll be like, hey, stay back looser. But if it's like a more open environment where guys can come behind me and get around me, I'll tell her to stay close. So again, another one little thing to consider depending on the situation you're in. And again, if she gets picked up, it's not the end of the world. It's not the most annoying thing. It's like, okay, trying to fend off these guys, get a moment, and then pop up a shot on that guy's leg and try and clear the guys around her. A little bit different, but they still handled it really, really well. Which brings me to the level design. That thought didn't really bring me here. It was just the next thing I'm thinking about, but my brain brings me to the level design. Resident Evil 4 has always had some of the best level design of all time. My favorite levels in The Evil Within have always been the ones that really fashion themselves over the big jungle gym kind of levels where there's a lot of things to run, a lot of places to go to, stairs to come up, windows to jump out of, ladders to climb, scaffolding to jump off of or climb up. This game does that just as well, obviously, you know, and if they're copying and pasting the same kind of level design just with super graphics, that's, you know, probably going to become obvious. But you do have to make changes when you make changes to the mechanics, because like if you change the way you interact with the world, you have to change the world so interacting with it still makes sense. You can expect that to be better than ever. It's just as good as the original. There's always so many ways to go, again contributing to how many different decisions you can make in any given moment. Do I jump through that window? Do I run into this house? Do I run around the house? Do I climb this ladder? Do I jump off? All that stuff's still there, and it contributes to this exhilarating gameplay where you're just thinking about what ammo you have, thinking about whether to use a knife, and also thinking about where to scramble to at all times. Resident Evil 8 had some fantastic segments that had this kind of level design where I was just scrambling all over, trying to get away, trying to get the high ground, switching to the low ground when appropriate, baiting out these animations of them dropping and then having to take a moment to get up. That's when I get my headshots, when I get 3 guys in a row doing that. Carefully putting yourself in positions where you're kind of making the enemies do what you want. Whether, again, it's getting animations to play so you can kind of slow down the traffic, or fitting them into a hallway to, again, slow down the traffic. Lots of stuff like that at every moment. It feels like every encounter, that stuff's always happening. It's always like, all the mechanics are working together, all the mechanics are working together every single time, and every single encounter is so much fun. I never really felt like I got to a point where I'm like, this doesn't feel as fun as the last one. It always feels new. The level design is so varied, yet it's always doing what it does well. I really think this game is like the best AAA survival horror game you can get right now when it comes to like those sorts of things. They did such an amazing freaking job with it, and it's incredibly fun. It's just so freaking fun. It never has any low moments. It's always, like, except the part where you play as Ashley, because it's like, hey, you're gonna play a different game for 20 minutes. Like, it's not that bad. It's one thing, but that's the worst I can say about it. That's the worst I can say about it. I tell you, this is what you pay 80 frickin' bucks for. When it comes to super graphics, like after Uncharted 4, I saw what technology can do, I was impressed by it, and now, unless you're doing something artistically interesting with the super graphics, I don't give a shit. Like Evil Within at the time, that was really good graphics. It still looks like video game now, it's not like photorealistic, but the reason that game stuck out to me so well was not because of how realistic it looked, but because of how cool the lighting was, how deliberate the harsh shadows were, all of the attention to detail in the environment. And you know why? It's because they had a really good artist on that game. They had somebody that can imagine environments that are just a visual spectacle, something that's really interesting to look at. That sort of thing is always way more valuable than simply how realistic a game looks to me. So leave it to Capcom to deliver a game worthy of the culturally significant name that they're holding on to, which is something not enough companies do these days, but Capcom, they always seem like they understand how people react to their games, what people are looking from their games, why their games were good to begin with, and ever since 7, they've just been delivering, and the graphics department are no exception. The colors and the detail and the clutter, you know how Bloodborne always had like a trillion tombstones everywhere? They have that same kind of vibe here with how cluttered certain environments can be. Now that the gameplay is focused around really steering and looking the camera everywhere, we may as well have something interesting to look at. Otherwise, if you don't need to look at everything, why not just have the fixed camera angles, right? So they really deliver with that. You're looking everywhere, everything is just as interesting as it was in like Resident Evil 7. I always thought Resident Evil 7 had some of the best environments in the series because you're in that household and everything you see kind of tells a little bit of a story just about that family. And here they're really doing that too. It kind of tells a little bit of a story of how this cult operates. You're just kind of in their environments, you're seeing the sorts of objects they have, like cement mixers. It's like, of course they would have cement mixers. How else would they make stone here? Little tiny things like that. It goes a long way in just making you feel like you're in a really neat place and thinking about what these people were doing before this virus started changing everything. An hour and a half now. I'll cut this down to however long this video is going to be, but those are my thoughts on Resident Evil 4, more or less. Just the gameplay is absolutely incredible. It's just as replayable as the original. The tone is just this perfect balance between the unashamed goofiness of the original and pushing it in a little bit more of an endearing direction. The presentation is one of the few games actually worthy of a AAA price, not to mention the amount of content here too. I hear there's a mercenaries mode coming soon. I really hope that has split screen because me and my girlfriend are going to be playing that non-freaking stop if it does. It's probably my favorite AAA game in like the last 5 years. I've had such an amazing time with it and I'm going to be replaying it like over and over and over throughout this whole freaking year. I'll tell you that right now. But one last thing I should probably get across before I end this little ramble video is this idea, because I see a lot of conversations surrounding this idea of like, should this replace the original? And I think no, because like I said before at the beginning of this, it's kind of like the RE2 remake where like, yes, what you are playing is a different game. It's just fundamentally not the same thing. It's trying to achieve the same amount of tension, and it does, but it does it through different means. It's a different game. Again, the conversation of every little action being its own micro decision that you have to dedicate a second to instead of being able to do a handful of things at once. Even if not as many things are going on, that's still a really valuable and fun way to experience a game. And I sincerely hope that people don't just get turned off by the controls right away, because you kind of have to sit with it for maybe an hour or so before you realize, okay, these controls make sense because they made the whole game make sense around it and it's so cleverly designed. So while I'm gonna praise the absolute shit out of this remake, it's one of the greatest remakes of all time and it's one of the most fun freaking horror games I've ever played in my life, I still think people should play the original. I mean, hell, it's like 20 bucks on everything, right? It's on Steam, it's on PS4, it's on Xbox Series. You can get it on pretty much everything for not that expensive. So honestly, if you want a gateway drug into the original older stuff, maybe you want to try playing some older survival horror games like the original Resident Evil or the original Silent Hill and stuff like that, get the original Resident Evil 4 after beating the remake and play through that sometime. Again, it's not that expensive, it's incredibly accessible, it's on pretty much everything that matters. I think it's even on Switch now. They're totally different games. They're very similar in aesthetics and level design, closer than the RE2 was to the RE2 remake, but what you are playing is still a different game. and therefore they're both valuable. They're both just as valuable. RE4 now is still as valuable as it was back then, and I think it is also important to play remakes anyway, or play the originals anyway, because it shows you kind of the process of how we got here, like what this was back in the day, what the best we could do then was. Because I think about this a lot. I feel like my generation is kind of the last generation that really saw technological progress, where people being born now, they're born and Uncharted 4 already exists. They're born and super graphics already exist. They never really got to see that climb, that evolution. So I think newer generations should have the option to play the original if they want to. So it's not, I bumped the mic, sorry. So it's not that hard to see that evolution. So I do think that Remake should come with the original. Kind of dumb this one doesn't. It's kind of dumb that none of them do. Like Shadow of the Colossus should have came with the original. Demon Souls should have come with the original. Just as an optional thing, even as an unlockable. Please, just put them in there. But again, at least the original is very readily available on all platforms that matter, and it's not that expensive either. So it's definitely better than, you know, Demon Souls original. Good luck playing that. You have to have a PS3 and you have to have a copy of it because it's on nothing. You know, it's not like that. So at least it isn't that. But yeah, that's my big dumb ramble about Resident Evil 4. Hope you guys enjoy listening to me talk about it. I would love to talk about more Resident Evil games on the channel in the future. It would give me an excuse to finally play the originals. Though I think, excuse me, I think I would be more likely to make videos about all the weirdo, obscure ones, you know, like Survivor or Outbreak, Volume 1 and 2, or Case 1 and 2, what are they called on PS2? Stuff like that. But yeah, you know, I'm gonna be running out of survival horror games to review, like obscure ones someday. Still got plenty, so it won't be like next year or the year after, but I mean, someday, I'm probably gonna have to tackle Resident Evil. So let me know what you think of that. Would you rather me just tackle the original 3, or you know, just do all the weirdo ones, or maybe just spend a couple of years going through the whole series? I don't know. Someday it'll happen, but not for now. But yeah, Resident Evil is such a cool series with such a cool history and so many amazing games that I really should be playing more of them. But hey, I'm gonna be playing Blue Stinger this Halloween, so look forward to that, I guess. But yeah, let me know what you think about me talking about that sort of thing down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the remake, because, you know, a lot of people have different opinions on it. I know a lot of people are like way more hardcore fans of the original. If you're a hardcore fan of the original, I want to hear what you think about it. So let me know. Thanks for watching. See you guys soon with something else. Bye-bye.
Leon Kennedy, Leon Kennedy, Leon Kennedy, Leon Kennedy, Leon Kennedy. He shoot the zombie. He's gonna shoot the zombie. Leon Kennedy.